J.D. Vance has been chosen to be the Republican nominee for vice president. He will run with former President Trump to take back the White House. We see Vance's name is finally up there now. J.D. Vance is a senator from Ohio, elected in 2022. He hasn't even been in the Senate for 2 years yet. However, now he is on the cusp of becoming the next vice president of the United States. And in this video, we're going to go over the electoral implications that this choice has and see the updated 2024 electoral map as a result of Vance being on the ticket. We're going to begin by filling in the solid states. And Vance, coming from the Midwest, he is going to resonate with a lot of rural voters, just like Mike Pence was able to do in 2016 and 2020. And of course, with Vance as the nominee and with him being from Ohio, the Buckeye State is undoubtedly going to be red. This is a state that Donald Trump carried by 8 points in 2020 and by 8.1% in 2016. With Vance, the senator from Ohio, now being his running mate, there's no doubt that Trump is going to win the state by at least 12 percentage points. He's also going to do very well in Iowa, which is very similar electorally to Ohio. It's a state that voted by nearly the same margin for Trump in 2020. Alaska, of course, we can't forget about that either. And the state of Texas, 40 electoral votes. J.D. Vance is going to have the most impact in the Midwest, but also in a lot of these very rural states. So we're going to see his impact be felt in states like New York, most of Pennsylvania, with the exception of Philly, and potentially in Illinois as well. For Joe Biden, he is still going to have some solid states. We still have Washington, California, Hawaii, as well as Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Biden's home state of Delaware, Maryland, the District of Columbia, and the 1st District of Maine, giving him just 112 electoral votes. Before we move on to the likely states, only 10% of you guys are actually subscribed, so please take the time to subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November, and follow me on Twitter for daily political updates. And so when looking at the states that remain, a lot of these should not be competitive. I mean, states like Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Colorado, New Mexico, these are states that Biden easily won. But this time around, they are going to get a lot closer. And the first state in the likely Democratic column is going to be Illinois, 19 electoral votes, a state that Biden carried by 17 points, the same margin as Clinton in 2016 and Obama in 2012. The state really hasn't moved too much, but now that we have a running mate from the Midwest with J.D. Vance on the ticket, and of course with Biden's faltering performance, Trump will be able to get within 12 points in the state of Illinois and make it likely Democratic. The state hasn't been that reliable for the Democrats for quite a while now. J.B. Pritzker did not win by a solid margin in the 2022 governor's election, and so we're going to see the race tighten up there. We also see a tightening in New York. Joe Biden actually only leads by 7% in the polling from the Empire State. As of right now, it is still much more likely that Biden wins than Trump, but if things continue to go the way they've been, if Biden has another disastrous debate performance, it is possible that New York goes into the lean or maybe even tilt Democratic categories, but for right now, it's going to stay in the Biden column. We also have the state of Oregon, 8 electoral votes. The governor's election here in 2022 went down into the single-digit margin range. That's probably going to happen again, as Oregon is not as blue of a state as many people think. Joe Biden did pretty well, but Hillary Clinton only won Oregon by 11 points. So Democrats are experiencing some weakness there. And finally, we have the state of Colorado, which I am placing very narrowly in the likely Democratic column. This is a state that Joe Biden won by 14 points in the last election. It's probably going to go down to around 5 to 7%, could go down to 3 to 4, but for right now, I'm going to be generous for the incumbent president and place it in likely. As for Trump, we have 2 states that were very competitive at last time around. North Carolina, Trump won by 1.3%, Florida by 3.4%. These are both states where the polling showed that Donald Trump was going to lose. However, in the end, he came out on top, and especially in Florida, he shocked everyone by improving from his 1.2% margin against Hillary Clinton, who is seen as the inferior candidate to Joe Biden. Now, JD Vance is probably not going to have too much of an impact on the Sun Belt. If Trump had gone with someone like Marco Rubio or Glenn Youngkin, they probably could have done better in the Southeast region, but just in North Carolina, Trump leads by 5 points in the polls. He is already doing well here, and JD Vance, I don't see him hurting Trump in this state in any way, nor in Florida, although if Rubio was on the ticket, Florida could push up into that solid category, but these are already locks essentially for Donald Trump. He does not need to focus on these states. Really, where he needs to focus on is the Midwest. He needs to focus on winning at least one state out of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And with JD Vance from Ohio, he is right in the middle of all of that. He is going to help Trump get over the edge in this region, maybe even help him win Minnesota, a state Republicans haven't won since 1972. And so with all of these solid and likely states filled in, we have 235 for the Trump-Vance ticket and 177 for Biden-Harris. We are now left with 13 states and 1 congressional district, and looking at what's left, I mean, we literally have New Jersey, Minnesota, New Mexico, Virginia, all states that Biden won by 10 points with the exception of Minnesota. The margin there was 7 points, but it really says a lot just how much more competitive these states are getting. And so starting off with the lean Biden states, the first one I'm going to fill in is New Mexico. Vance really isn't going to add too much for Trump here, and again, New Mexico is not a state by any means that Trump needs to target or needs to win at all. If the former president had gone with Marco Rubio, I could see Biden flipping New Mexico. It is the only state with a Hispanic majority, and Marco Rubio would be able to help Trump even more with Hispanics. He's already doing much better than Republicans in the past. However, with Vance as the nominee, there probably isn't going to be too much of a change in that state. However, Vance will probably help Trump out a little bit in New Jersey, and that is why I have the state in the lean Democratic column. New Jersey wasn't even that solid for Biden last time around. He only won the state by just under 16 points, and with Bob Menendez, who is still in the Senate, who will be on the ballot this November running as an independent, he is really going to drag Democrats down. He was convicted on multiple charges over the past few years of corruption and bribery, and so that is really going to hurt Biden. Now, it is still very unlikely that Trump actually wins in New Jersey, but with Vance as the nominee and with all the troubles Democrats are having in the states, Bob Menendez has essentially gone rogue and is insisting on staying in the race. Andy Kim, who is the Democratic nominee to replace him, is leading by single digits in the Senate election in New Jersey. That is just how competitive it is going to get. And finally, we have the state of Maine, 2 electoral votes. The polling here actually shows Trump to be very slightly ahead, but we simply don't have too much data from the state yet. And it is a state that Biden won by 9 points. The state did get competitive down to a 3-point margin when Clinton ran in 2016, but without more data, I am going to place Maine in the lean Democratic column, but it is definitely subject to change. As for Trump, we have quite a few lean states that voted for Biden in the last election. The first one, most obviously, is Georgia, 16 electoral votes. Joe Biden did narrowly win the state by 1/4 of a percentage point last time. He was the first Democrat to win since Bill Clinton in 1992. In that election, Georgia was the closest state. It was also the closest state in 2020. However, Donald Trump is going to be able to win this state back, even though it's elected 2 Democratic senators over the last few years. Joe Biden was at 53% favorability when he won in 2020. He is now down to 37-38. There's no chance he wins Georgia, just like Arizona, a state that Biden won by nearly the same margin. Both of these are going to fall into the lean Republican category. Donald Trump is leading by 5 points in both of these states. I'm going to give Biden the benefit of the doubt and assume that Trump is being slightly overestimated in both Georgia and Arizona, but there's really no scenario right now where Biden is able to win them. We also have Nevada, 6 electoral votes. This is a pretty big flip for Trump, as it is a state that Trump has never won before. He lost it by the same margin, 2.4%, in both 2016 and 2020. Really shows you that Biden didn't do too much to help Democrats in the Silver State, even though he was supposed to be a much better candidate than Hillary Clinton. Biden was expected to win by 6 points in the polling in 2020. Today, Trump leads by around that margin in the the states, and Nevada is almost certainly a lock. Vance doesn't really add anything in these 3 states, but Trump was already doing well, and the vice presidential nominee certainly isn't going to hurt the former president in any of these states. We're now just left with states from this upper right quadrant of the map. First off, we're going to get the blue wall states out of the way. They're called the blue wall because from the early 1990s, late 1980s, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania voted blue in every single election, helping Democrats to win numerous times. The elections of Barack Obama, Bill Clinton. But in 2016, Donald Trump flipped all 3 states. It essentially became a red wall, but in 2020, Joe Biden won them back very narrowly, and in 2024, Donald Trump leads in the polling by 1 to 3% in all 3 of these states. And with JD Vance, this is probably why Trump chose him. He has a lot of appeal in the Midwest, not in the big cities like Philly or in Michigan where you have Detroit. However, in those more rural areas where there are a lot of people in those rural areas in these Midwestern states, that is where Vance is going to come in and assist the former president. And that is why I have all 3 of the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania in that lean Republican category. We're now left with just 3 more states. These are going to be the tilt states, states decided by margins less than 1 percentage point. The first one we have for Trump is Minnesota, 10 electoral votes. Again, JD Vance is probably going to be enough to help push Republicans over the finish line here, and Trump will be the first Republican nominee to win Minnesota in a presidential election in 52 years. That is just how momentous this victory would be. We also have New Hampshire going to Trump. The state is very close. Trump leads by 2 points in the most recent poll, and in 2016, he almost won the Granite State. 0.37% was Clinton's margin. That is just how close it got. However, this time around, I would say that Trump is ever so slightly favored, but of course, it still could go both ways. And finally, in Virginia, 13 electoral votes. For context, Biden won this state by 10% in 2020. It can definitely get competitive. We saw the election of Glenn Youngkin here in 2021 as the Republican governor, but for right now, I'm going to place it into the tilt Democratic category. Now, if Trump had chosen Youngkin, I would place it as tilt Republican, but since he went with Vance, Virginia is not going to change as much as it could have with Youngkin as the nominee. We also have the 2nd District of Maine, which is going to be lean Republican based on most of the forecasts. And so this is the 2024 electoral map with the addition of JD Vance on the ticket. He's going to help Trump out in the Midwest, considerably helping to flip Minnesota, and this will put the former president at 327 electoral votes to Joe Biden at 211. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election. Like this video down below if you enjoyed it. Comment down below, do you approve of Vance as the nominee? Make sure you follow me on Twitter for daily political updates, and I will see you guys in the next video.